out in the forge today making a paring knife, and you can see I've got my flat stock in the forge heating up, and I do not have as much video of me actually working the metal as I would like, and that's because, and original video me will explain this in a couple minutes too, it's pretty hot outside, and my phone keeps on turning off because it gets too hot while I'm trying to record myself working out there. But here what I'm doing is I'm drawing out the flat stock into a thinner piece because I want it to be like a not as wide as it is the way it comes, so I can make that paring knife a smaller knife to use in the kitchen just for cutting and peeling and things like that. And the thing about when you're drawing things out, when you pound on the edge of it, you have to then turn it flat and clean up what you've just like made kind of mushroom out or bend out. So you can see that I do that every time after I've pounded on the edge of the knife. What I was going for here is a knife that's about 7 inches long, and what I'm doing right now is I made a couple of marks 7 inches apart on the floor of my cabana, and I am bending down to check and see how close I am to those marks, and I was not that close, so I'm actually drawing out more of the flat stock here. So I've been working on this paring knife is what I want this to be, like a small knife for the kitchen. And so I've got the profile kind of forged in a bit, and I wanted to record more of working on this, but during the day my phone keeps dying because it gets too hot. And so hopefully there's the flames shooting out of the board. You can see a little better. Here, I'll turn off the light. That'll be good. That's why you gotta use tongs, because the flames that come out will burn you if you're not using tongs. So I thought I had my camera running for the last while, but apparently I didn't, so I didn't get all the footage of me profiling out my blade a little more and profiling out my tang a bit. I'm not done, but I need to go in and get ready for bed. I'm a teacher and tomorrow's the first day of school. So here's what I've got at the moment. And it's got a little bit of work to do. I could do this using the stock removal method for making knives, where you just grind off or cut off the pieces of metal that you don't want and then you sharpen it, but I'm calling this Danger Cabana Forge, not Danger Cabana stock removal. So I am forging it to shape, which I enjoy doing. So different time, different night. I did this knife over probably about 2 weeks because I could never really get that much time in at once, probably 30-minute snippets off and on every couple of days is what I was able to do. But now what I'm doing is I need to put the holes in my tang so that I can put the handle pins in, and what I've found is that my drill bits just don't cut through the steel, and so I've found that I need to drift in these holes. And drift is that tool that I've got there. It's basically just a pointy piece of rebar, and you get your metal hot and you put the spot where you want a hole over the hardy hole in your anvil, and then you put that drift on there and you pound it through, and it goes through the metal because it's really hot. And so I will drift in my holes to start with, and then I'll use my drill to clean them up, because once the holes are in there, then the drill will can get the metal, just can't drill actually through it, but it will clean up the holes. So now I'm drifting in the second of those 2 holes for the handle pins. Drifting does often bend your piece of metal that you're drifting the holes in if it's thin, which it often is. I doubt you can really drift holes through like a really big piece of metal, at least not easily. So then you have to straighten it out, and here I am with the drill, working on cleaning up those holes. As you can see, the drill still struggles, and the sound that it makes as it's struggling is not the most pleasant sound on the planet. But I did eventually manage to get both these holes cleaned up. You can see I'm using vice grips to adjust how the knife is sitting in my vise because it's still really hot. I took it straight from the forge to the vise. So enjoy watching me get these holes drilled through. For the second hole, I actually had to take it back to the forge and re-drift the hole because it turned out I hadn't gotten it quite all the way through, and that drill just would not go through the steel, which is kind of crazy because it's not hardened yet. But I guess this is hard enough steel just on its own that you must need some kind of extra special drill bit. I don't know. This is one of the more expensive ones that I found at the store so that I could make the holes in the metal. So now I'm doing just some final cleanup on the blade, making sure it's straight. And then here in a second, I'm going to quench it. So, as anyone who's watched Forged in Fire knows, a very important element of making your knife is hardening it. And the first step to that is quenching it, usually in oil. So there's my highly sophisticated quench tank. It is a whipped cream can with the top cut off. And I'm quenching it in canola oil. That's something that I do based on my research, you can quench 1084 steel in. And then I'm tempering it in my highly sophisticated tempering oven, also called a toaster oven. And you put it at 350 and you leave it in there for 2 hours. And so I'm turning it on and letting it go. And now we grind. Grinding can be pretty tedious. I'd say all told, working on this knife, I spent probably close to 2 hours grinding. And first thing you do is you're working to clean up the blade, get all the forge scale off, which is what I'm doing right now. Obviously it's sped up quite a bit, but right now I'm cleaning up the forge scale, and then we've had a bit of a time jump from daytime to nighttime, and I'm still cleaning it up. And then the next step is to start working on the bevels in the knife and getting it to have an edge. All this initial work I'm doing with 80 grit, an 80 grit belt on my belt grinder, and what you're about to see here in a second, or maybe it's in a few minutes, I'm not sure. I'm going to use this trick that I saw in a different video where I established the plunge grinds on my knife, which those are, for those not familiar, those are the spots on the knife, like near the handle where the edge, like the sharp edge starts, and you can see like a really defined spot on the knife where it goes from being like flat to having the bevels and tapering down to the edge. That's called the plunge grind. And what you just saw there was I used my needle files to establish that plunge grind in advance so it would be neater from grinding, because my last couple times, my first two knives, my plunge grinds were not neat. So, and there's a fair amount more of this grinding, so I will let it continue, and I'll be back in a second. And now we're cutting handle scales, and as you're about to see, I learned that you want to have bigger pieces of wood on a table saw. And that's why you don't play with table saws, kids. And now I'm drilling the holes through my handle scales. I'm using some wood, and I think I said this in my last video. I'm using some leftover wood from my kitchen countertops, which are made out of butcher block, which is made out of what's called hevia, or I've heard it pronounced Hevia. It's rubber wood. And here I am making sure that those brass pins fit through. And now here is the scales all glued up, and the knife is in the vise. Now we are doing more grinding. At some point I skipped, I guess I didn't record my initial shaping of the handle. And in this video, what you see here is I decided that I was better off shaping the handle, at least doing the end of the shaping of the handle with some files and sandpaper, because what I've found is when I shape my handle on my grinder, it tends to get away from me and put gouges in the wood. So I'm using some files that I have to get the final shaping done on this handle, and then as you can see here, I'm using some sandpaper to smooth it out. I think this like thin strip of sandpaper like that's a fun method to use, so that's always enjoyable. And I did see that also on Forged in Fire, which is where the majority of my knowledge comes from. Not sure if that's a bad thing, but it is a great show. Hashtag I want to be on it someday. So now I'm doing my final cleanup on the blade and putting an edge on it. By the time I was done, it was pretty sharp. I never did get it to, and here you can see what I'm doing is I'm changing out the belt for a higher and finer grit. I never did get it to the point where it'll shave the hair off my arm. I'm not sure how those guys on Forged in Fire managed that, but I'm sure I'll get there eventually. And so now I'm at the 240 grit belt, so I'm putting more of an edge on the knife, and I'm making the blade in general smoother. And there I just tried to see if it would cut that sandpaper cleanly, and it wouldn't. So I'm putting on the 400 grit belt, going extra high, and do the final cleanup, put the final edge on it. All right, so here's the final result. Final product, I suppose. The handle's still a little bit rough. I guess I could clean that up, but I was able, and there's still a little bit of a dirty epoxy there where the handle meets the and that might be a little bit of forged scale too, where the handle meets the blade. But I think it turned out pretty well. I think this is my cleanest knife to date. It's only my third one, so that's cool. Here is the knife that I was patterning it off of. You can see got the length pretty close, but I'm not sure where I made this mistake, and I should have been checking more mid-build, but obviously I made the blade way longer and the handle way shorter. But in the end, I'm not displeased with how it turned out, and I think I look forward to trying it out in the kitchen, seeing how it works. So that is the build on this paring knife, and we'll see you guys next time.